If Joseph shows faithfulness in hard times, Moses shows God's call despite fear. Moses wasn't a king, he wasn't a confident prophet, he wasn't even sure of himself. And yet, God chose him to free a whole nation. You're on the JM Impact Plus channel. Don't go anywhere. Stay until the end for a new adventure. Like, subscribe, and share. The story of Moses teaches us a powerful truth. God doesn't call the strongest people. He makes those he calls strong. Chapter 5. Moses, the man God calls from the fire. In the shadow of the pyramids, in the heart of the world's most powerful empire, a story of survival and destiny begins to unfold. It's a story that reminds us that even in the deepest darkness, the light of divine providence always finds a way. Moses was born into a time of death. The Hebrew people, enslaved in Egypt, grew in number, and this growth scared Pharaoh. His fear turned into unspeakable cruelty. He ordered all newborn Hebrew boys to be thrown into the Nile, drowned in the very river that gave life to his kingdom. A decree meant to wipe out a people, to extinguish a promise. But a brave mother, Jochebed, refused to give in to the tyranny. For 3 months, her son's cry was a secret kept with love and worry. Each day was a victory against death. When she could no longer hide him, she didn't give him up to death, but to faith. She wove a basket of reeds, a cradle of hope, and entrusted him to the river. Gap. This wasn't an act of despair, but an act of radical trust in a God who sees and hears. The Nile, Pharaoh's instrument of genocide, became God's vehicle of salvation. And there, by a spectacular divine twist of fate, Pharaoh's own daughter discovered the child. Her heart was touched. She defied her own father's decree, choosing compassion over cruelty. Moses was saved. In the very house of the oppressor. God's plan is always bigger than human plans. Taken in by Pharaoh's daughter, he grew up in the palace. He was named Moses, which means drawn from the water. His very name is a testament to his miraculous rescue. He received the education of an Egyptian prince, a privileged training unavailable to his people. He grew up between two worlds, Hebrew by blood, Egyptian by education. From the start, Moses carried a dual identity. He learned mathematics, architecture, military strategy, and the governance of the most advanced empire of his time. Gap. But secretly, thanks to his sister Miriam, who cleverly suggested their own mother as a wet nurse, he was also fed the stories and faith of his people. God was already preparing his instrument. Every piece of knowledge gained, every skill developed, was a piece of the divine puzzle. The knowledge of Egypt sharpened his mind, giving him the tools to lead and organize, but the suffering of his people, which he observed from afar, shaped his heart, kindling in him a thirst for justice. 2 loyalties, 1 destiny. This inner tension was the crucible of his training. He lived in luxury, but his soul was connected to misery. The grandeur of the palace didn't satisfy him. The truth of his origins called to him. Gap. This is a duality many of us can understand. Living in one world while feeling our true citizenship is elsewhere. That we are called to something greater. In the quiet of his thoughts, God composed symphonies of providence. Every experience, every relationship, every lesson was orchestrated for a future purpose. Nothing is wasted in God's economy. God wove his training through contrasts and tensions, saved by the oppressor to become the one who would confront oppression, raised in the system to become the one who would dismantle it. This is the divine method, using the enemy's tools to accomplish his own purposes, nurtured with a dual identity, shaped by sovereign grace. When God prepares a leader, nothing is left to chance. The training might take 40 years, in a palace or in a desert, but it's always perfect and intentional. The mission is already underway, etched in his soul long before he's even aware of it. Moses is a prince of Egypt, but his heart beats to the rhythm of the slave. He has power, but he longs for justice. He has everything, but he feels he's missing the essential, his true calling. But before the mission is revealed, before the leader can emerge, comes the test. A test that will arise from his own impatience and force him to flee everything he's ever known. One day, Moses acted too quickly. He killed an Egyptian to defend a Hebrew. But it wasn't God's timing. The secret was no longer a secret. As a result, Moses fled, losing his position. He became a shepherd in the desert. 40 years in the shadows, 40 years of silence, 40 years of invisible preparation. God often works the most when we think we've failed. Humility polishes your calling. The desert becomes a classroom, learning to guide before leading a people. Simplicity strengthens the soul. When everything seems dark, God draws near. The ordinary prepares for the extraordinary. This staff will become a sign. The desert road leads to the fire of God. The hour strikes. 40 years have passed. 40 years in the quiet desert. The man walking here is no longer the prince of Egypt, but a forgotten shepherd, a runaway whose past seems to have vanished into the sand. Each day is like the one before, the sun rising, the sheep moving, loneliness as his only friend. An ordinary day, a plain desert, a tired shepherd. He leads his sheep past the desert, all the way to God's mountain, Horeb. A place he doesn't yet know is holy. And then, something amazing happens. A break in how things usually are. A bush is burning, but it's not being burned up. The fire dances, but it doesn't destroy. It's not a fire of ruin, but a fire of pure presence. Curious, Moses gets closer. He wants to understand this amazing sight. That's when a voice calls to him from the middle of the fire. Moses! Moses! God speaks. Moses shakes. The Lord tells him, "Don't come any closer, take off your sandals, because the ground you are standing on is holy ground. Holiness is near, and it asks for respect, for openness." By taking off his shoes, Moses gives up his protection, his independence. He stands barefoot before his Maker. The voice keeps going. It says it's the God of his fathers, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. It says it has seen the suffering of its people in Egypt, heard their cries. Gap. And then the mission comes, clear and huge. "Now go, I am sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people out of Egypt."
Who am I to go to Pharaoh? Me? A shepherd? A killer in hiding? I am nobody. Lord, I can't speak well. My mouth and tongue are not good. How can I convince anyone? They won't believe me. They won't listen to me. They'll say the Lord didn't appear to me.
For every doubt, every fear, every question, God answers. Not by saying Moses isn't weak, but by showing his own strength. To the question, "Who am I?" God doesn't say, "You are able," but, "I will be with you." The question is no longer about who Moses is, but about who is sending him. It's not Moses' ability that matters, it's God's presence. To show his power, God changes the shepherd's staff into a snake, then back into a staff in Moses' hand. He gives him signs, not to take away fear, but to grow faith. The everyday tool, that simple wooden staff, becomes a tool for God. The voice that sends promises to be there. Fear doesn't go away, but it's met with a bigger promise. Fear turns into obedience. The call changes the man. The tired shepherd gets a new identity. He is God's messenger. The fire of the bush doesn't go out. It settles inside him. It's an inner fire that will fill him with passion for his mission. This fire is a desire for fairness, a love for his people, a strong belief in the presence within him. The desert, a place of being sent away and forgotten, becomes the start of a big story. To obey is to walk. It's taking the first step without seeing the end of the road. Faith moves forward even when things are unknown, because it's not based on how clear the goal is, but on how trustworthy the one who calls is. The weak one becomes the messenger. The hesitant one becomes the guide. The runaway becomes the rescuer. God doesn't pick those who are already good enough. He makes those he picks good enough. That's the amazing thing about faith. Our weaknesses become the place where God's all-power can work. Heaven calls history into action. A shepherd is sent to challenge the most powerful empire in the world. The meeting with Pharaoh is coming. A showdown is getting ready, not between two men, but between the gods of Egypt and the one true God. When God speaks, the earth listens. Weakness becomes a path. Presence is its strength, and fire guides it. The call is bigger than fear, because the promise is stronger than doubt. I will be with you. These words still echo in the desert, and in the heart of the man who now walks toward his destiny. The time of exile is over. Strong with God's promise, Moses returns to Egypt, no longer a runaway, but a liberator. He doesn't come back alone. He walks with the certainty of a power beyond him, a mission etched into his soul in the heart of the desert. Gap. His voice, once unsure, now carries the weight of a divine command. Let my people go. Facing him stands Pharaoh, the picture of earthly power, a man seen as a god. The ruler listens, but doesn't truly hear. His heart hardens. Every request for freedom is met with a scornful refusal. For him, giving in would mean admitting that a greater power than his own exists. It's a battle that begins not between two men, but between human pride and divine rule. Then, nature itself becomes the stage for God's power. Plagues strike Egypt, one after another, like the waves of a relentless ocean. The water of the Nile, the source of life, turns to blood. Darkness covers the land in broad daylight, a darkness so thick it feels solid. Each miracle is a direct attack on the Egyptian gods, a showing that their power is just pretend. Gap. But Pharaoh resists, trapped by his own pride. The night grows darker before the dawn of a new age. Then comes the big night, the night of Passover, a night of fear and obedience. As the angel of death passes through Egypt, each Hebrew family gathers, protected by the blood of a lamb marking their doors. It's the ultimate act of faith, a sign of trust in the promise of salvation. In the quiet of their homes, they eat quickly, hearts pounding, ready for a departure that cannot be delayed. The cries of pain rising from Egypt finally break Pharaoh's will. The order is given. The departure is coming soon. Centuries of slavery end in a single night. The exit is prepared with hurried urgency. They gather what they can. They don't look back. It's the journey of an entire people, from old folks to newborns, leaving the land of their suffering for a promise still unseen. The escape begins. The path leads them to the edge of an impossible obstacle. Before them, the Red Sea, a liquid and endless barrier. Gap. But the break is short-lived. Pharaoh's pride, broken for a moment, comes back to life. Regretting having lost his slaves, he sends his army after them. Behind them, the Egyptian chariots and horsemen, a cloud of dust and fury getting closer and closer. The trap seems perfect. Fear grips the people. Whispers of despair rise against Moses. Weren't there enough graves in Egypt for you to bring us to die in the desert? Freedom already seems like a failure, the promise an illusion. This is the moment when faith is most tested, on the brink between the impossible and the unavoidable. But God opens a way where there was none. At his command, Moses stretches out his hand, and a mighty wind rises, splitting the waters in two. The sea becomes a path, its waves standing like two liquid walls. The people move forward in the midst of the impossible, on dry ground that appeared in the heart of the deep. Faith becomes a passage. Every step is a challenge to logic, a statement that the laws of nature bow to their creator. Once the last Hebrew was on the other side, the Egyptian army, blinded by its rage, entered this unlikely corridor. Gap. Then Moses stretched out his hand again. Salvation closed behind God's people. The walls of water collapsed with divine fury, swallowing the chariots, the horsemen, and their king. Pride was swallowed up. The sea, which was a barrier, became a weapon. The trap, which was for the Hebrews, became the tomb of their pursuers. On the other side, at sunrise, fear had turned into wonder. Deliverance becomes a song. A hymn of praise rises, led by Miriam, Moses' sister. It's the first song of a free people. When God calls, he always opens a way, even through the seas of our impossibilities. The leader born in fear now walks with confidence. The staff of a simple shepherd has become the tool of a miracle that reshapes history. Every step on this new land is a living testimony to God's faithfulness. The road continues, long and dry, but it is now lit by the certainty that the God who calls is also the one who leads. Liberation is not the final destination, but the beginning of the journey towards the promise. You can be scared and still be called. Your past doesn't stop your future. The desert gets you ready for freedom. God uses people who aren't perfect to make perfect plans happen. It's not your voice that sets people free. It's God's power. The fire Moses saw in the bush. God wants to light that fire in you. Fear doesn't put out the coal. The coal burns up the fear. Answer with courage. Here I am. Right where you are, God is still speaking. Your mission starts every day. To set free is to serve. God makes strong those he calls. Grace opens windows where walls stand tall. Receive the fire. Move forward. If God called Moses in the desert, he can call you right where you are. Type in the comments, "Here I am." Like and subscribe for more of the Unknown Origins of Israel series. The journey has just begun. Thanks for sharing.